The first time I heard about the Clocktower, I thought it was just another campus legend. Every university has one, right? A shadowed building that everyone avoids at night, a place that carries stories students whisper when the library is empty and the hallways echo. But this Clocktower had a ritual. A deadly ritual. Every year, without fail, a student would climb its spiraling iron staircase and jump. Some said it was a suicide pact. Some said it was a curse. Most people, if they thought about it at all, called it coincidence or tragedy. I came to know the truth because I had to. Not because I wanted to, not because I believed in curses or omens, but because the truth came looking for me. The year it happened, the fall semester had been unusually quiet. Students were settling in, the campus glowing in orange and amber from the autumn leaves. The air smelled like wet stone and old books, and the chatter of new students blended with the familiar laughter of seniors. But even amid the normal rhythms of campus life, there was a tension, a collective unease that no one admitted aloud. It started with a note. Nobody knows who left it on the dean's desk, but it was simple: this year, the pact will break. Nobody took it seriously. At first. The student who died that year was Elliot Harrow. Quiet, unassuming, known for his sketchbooks and late-night walks around the old quadrangle. He had friends, enough to be liked but not enough to be noticed. And then, one October evening, he disappeared. Campus security found him the next morning, sprawled at the base of the Clocktower, the cold stone steps smeared with the echo of his fall. At first, it looked like every other year. They said he had climbed willingly. They called it the ritual, another predictable tragedy. But the witnesses told a different story. There was Marcy Linton, a sophomore who often studied near the tower. She said she saw someone tall, hooded, moving too quickly in the shadow of the staircase. And then Elliot had fallen. Not jumped. Other students mentioned seeing figures near the tower that night, shadows darting across the windows, a flash of movement on the stairs, but no one could be certain. Marcy's account was the clearest, and it was chilling. Someone had pushed him. The Clocktower had secrets, and Elliot had stumbled across one he shouldn't have. The tower itself was built in 1893, a relic from a time when the university was small and secretive. Its gears still ticked, despite decades of neglect. The iron staircase spiraled like a snake around a hollow core, and at the top, the bell loomed, tarnished but resolute, watching the campus like a silent sentinel. No one climbed it without thinking of the stories, the warnings passed down through student whispers. And then there were the letters. Small, folded notes slipped under doors, left in lockers, tucked into books in the library. They were always addressed to someone who might be considering the climb, signed with a single word: Pact. The words were simple, sometimes chilling: "It is time, do not falter, we are watching." Elliot had found one of these letters. Only, he didn't understand its significance. He thought it was a prank. He thought it was art. But the letter wasn't meant for him. It was a warning. A test. And it led him to something far more dangerous, a meeting of a group known as the Custodians. The Custodians were obscure. Not recognized by the administration, not officially acknowledged, but records in the archives hinted at their presence. They were students, always seniors, bound by rules older than most could remember. Their purpose was simple, terrifying: the pact must continue. Every year, a student had to climb. Every year, it had to be voluntary. If the rules were broken, the consequences were severe. Elliot hadn't been chosen. He had found a letter. He had stumbled upon the meeting. And he had been followed. Someone decided that he couldn't be allowed to leave with what he'd learned. The investigation that followed was the kind of nightmare you only read about in true crime magazines. Campus police were thorough but hampered by tradition, by history, by students who didn't want the pact broken. Witnesses were scared. Students remembered seeing faces at the tower at odd hours, figures moving in and out of shadows, whispers carrying down the stone corridors. Everyone had a story, but no one wanted to tell it fully. I started digging because I couldn't shake the feeling that the campus itself was hiding something. And the deeper I went, the more I realized that this wasn't just about Elliot. The Pact had been around for decades, maybe longer. I found records, old diaries in the university archives, newspaper clippings yellowed with age. The stories were eerily consistent. Every year, a student died. Every year, the pattern repeated, almost ritualistically. And almost always, someone connected to the Custodians was near the Clocktower just before it happened. I went to the tower myself one evening. It was quiet, almost peaceful, but the air felt charged. The staircase loomed, twisting upward into shadow. I traced the iron with my hand, imagining the years of students who had climbed here, some willingly, some not. At the top, I could see the view of the campus spread below, the trees golden in the last light of dusk. It was breathtaking. It was terrifying. I started asking around about the other deaths, the students before Elliot. Patterns emerged, always seniors, always some connection to the Custodians or those who knew about them. The letters, the warnings, the careful nudges toward the staircase. It was meticulous. Ritualistic. I interviewed a former custodian years later, someone who had left after one too many climbs. They didn't want to talk at first, but the fear in their eyes gave them away. They described the hierarchy, the tests, the absolute enforcement of the Pact. They described how one student, in all their arrogance or ignorance, could disrupt decades of order, and how quickly the group would respond. That's when the word push began to make sense. Elliot hadn't jumped. He hadn't agreed. He had been removed from the equation. The campus never really recovered. Students came and went, some drawn by the challenge, others fleeing the shadow of the Clocktower. The annual climb continued, but with added caution. Whispers grew, eyes lingered. Every year, someone looked a little too closely at the stairs, or lingered too long near the base. And every year, the fear lingered like fog in the corners of lecture halls and dorm rooms. I kept the letters I found in Elliot's locker. They were simple, elegant, terrifying. I read them over and over, trying to understand what compelled students to participate, to obey, to die. And in them, I realized the terrifying truth: the Pact wasn't just a ritual. It was control. It was the idea that the past can dictate the present, that tradition can outweigh life itself. I never found out who pushed Elliot. Maybe it was a senior, maybe it was someone higher up in the Custodians. Maybe it was someone who thought they were preserving balance. Or maybe it was someone who just wanted to see the story continue. The Clocktower still stands. Its gears still turn. The bell swings silently above the campus, watching, waiting. And every year, when October comes and the air turns cold and the leaves fall like embers, students still climb. Some choose. Some do not. I've learned to stay away from the tower after dark. But sometimes, when the wind blows just right and the campus is quiet, I swear I hear a soft step behind me. And I remember Elliot, and I remember the Pact, and I realize that some agreements are not meant to be broken. And some students never truly leave the Clocktower.